So basically, this video is about a particular character in Street Fighter, which is E Honda, and kind of the concept of improving at fighting games when you play a character that doesn't have to rely on fundamentals to climb the ranks. First, there's some footage of Daigo literally playing matches with his E Honda against some other guy who's an E Honda main. And then he gets into, Daigo does this segment where he takes questions from his viewers and he basically answers them. And there's a question about how to improve at fighting games, even when you play a character that might not be known for fundamentals. Other people told me that I won't improve as a player if I play a character like Honda. Is this true? You do feel bad for the guy. Because you get this, it's just such an earnest and simple question. It honestly doesn't matter which character this video is about. It doesn't matter that it's about E Honda. It's just like in Smash, like how many times have you heard this? Like how many times have you heard, or even said, like I don't know which end of this you're on, but how many times have you heard the opinion or the idea that like, well, someone's not going to get better because they play a character that doesn't incentivize fundamentals. It's such a classic trope, I guess, in Smash and in fighting games in general. It's funny because it's such an earnest question and it's a simple question. The guy's just saying like, hey, people tell me that I'm not going to improve if I keep going with Honda. Is this true? But you know that the writer of this question has gotten so much flack from people that he's probably quote unquote cheesed out, which is why Daigo's laughing, right? Like at face value, it's not a very funny question. But you know, like how much history this guy has to have with people telling him, dude, you're actually ass. You actually have no fundamentals. Like you're actually booty butt cheeks and you don't deserve any of the wins you're getting. And Daigo knows this, so this is why he thinks it's hilarious. And it's why he says that. Well, he's really thinking about how to structure his response here. He's really thinking about it. Dude, what the he's been, by the way, this hasn't been one cut. He's been cutting around. He thought for this, he thought for his answer for like 3 minutes, dude. Jesus. He is a very peculiar character. It happens that Honda players do not face common, yeah.
ただそれも取り組み方次第かなとは思います。取り組み方次第だから、ホンダでその100カウントしと続きだけやるんじゃなくて、前に歩いたり通常技を使ったりっていう感じでやってれば、ホンダを使ってもオーソドックスな戦い方ってできるんで、その友達が言うねのとはまた違った。
That your friend. That your friend.
かなとは思うけどね。ただちょっとコマンドとかないんで、ためキャラとため技とボタンだけなんで、格闘ゲームのそういう一つ技術の一つである。
And this is specific to Honda, but he's basically saying like, well, maybe your tech skill won't get better if you keep going with this character because you're not going to learn how to input special moves the same way as other players and okay, yeah, that's totally a thing. That's totally a thing for sure. You definitely run into melee players. I will stop here and say you definitely run into plenty of melee players who, like, because of the character they started the game with, it's not because of the character, but it's like related to the character they started the game with. They just never develop tech skill or good movement with other characters. And the reason I say it's not because of the character you started with is because there's Plup, who started with Samus, who's thought to be a slow character that is really peculiar in how she moves, how she plays neutral. And Plup went on to become, arguably I would say, the fastest Fox, the fastest Sheik, probably the best, some of the best movement in Melee. And then on the flip side, you have Hugs. And I'm not going to say much more about that. But there were times when Hugs went on Twitter and would say things like, okay, I'm going to start playing Peach. I'm going to start playing Sheik. I'm going to start playing some other characters that are going to give me better chances in the long run for success. And he would drop those characters after like a fucking week. Like everyone knows that any character Hugo has ever tried to play besides literally Melee Samus, they're always so scuffed. And I do think that for a lot of, I will say, a lot of the Samus players that I know, this is something that can happen. I don't think it has to happen, but it definitely can happen. So the input thing is a thing. Like, oh, you started with this character, so you're not going to learn execution that applies to most of the cast. Whereas, you know, like, I don't know, Spacey's players or like Marth players, Falcon players usually don't really have that problem. Like, I don't know any Fox players that like just can't pick up secondaries. Like Leffen, super good secondaries. Moki, super good secondaries. You know, Mango, obviously. Silent Wolf. SFAT, like, I mean, he's not really known for his secondaries, but like I've seen him play at like locals and stuff. I've seen him play secondaries, and his secondaries are good, right? So that is the thing. That is a thing. It's a short, yeah, this is what I was saying. It's a short question, but there's this like, there's so much history loaded into this question. It feels like there are years and years of this guy getting berated by his peers. It's like the way he asks it. I don't know. You gotta feel bad for this guy. You gotta feel bad for this guy. Everyone's telling him he's dog shit because he plays. And I think this is a thing in Melee and in Smash. So we already talked about the execution thing. Like sometimes you're just literally Hugs 86 and you... Now I would say Hugs is really good fundamentals, but I wouldn't say he's good tech skill. And I do think that the way Samus functions in neutral is so different from other characters in Melee that like, I don't know. I just have a really hard time visualizing him picking up other characters. I just think that's going to be really, really, really difficult. Or it would be more work than, you know, someone who plays, Fox or Marth or even like Sheik, Falco, etc., etc. But the thing is, you really hear this concept a lot as applied to characters like the Ice Climbers. And I remember, I think a classic example of this, and you don't see as much of this anymore, but I think a classic example of this is the wobbling era. And people would talk about dirty wobblers, like they could never actually get good at Melee. You know, myself included. I was, especially behind closed doors, very harsh on Icy's mains back then. I was like, oh, you know, they're just playing this game. They're just playing Ice Climbers. They're not really playing Melee, you know, and obviously, the way Ices move around, the way they take stocks, even when wobbling was legal, it was so specific that I felt, and I think a lot of people felt, a lot of top players felt like it was just antithetical to how most characters in Melee function, and therefore, if you started as an Ices player, you could not get good with other characters. The funny thing is, I don't think that really held true. I think a lot of the Ices players from back then actually got quite good with other, like Nintendo, for example, or Infinite Numbers, even Army. And I was so sure that Army, because again, you look at how Icy's moves, they don't dash dance, they're just wave dashing around, right? They kind of zone upwards. Like when you think about how they deal with like Fox, they're kind of just using up airs to shark for full jumps a lot of the time. It's just a very different game than what other characters are doing. And then of course the wobble, you're not reacting to DI or anything. Once you get the wobble, the stock is just over, right? But sure enough, you know, even though I don't think any of them became particularly prominent tournament threats, you know, I played Army's Falcon back in the day on Netplay, and it was super legit. Arguably the best example in Smash Bros. Is actually Wizzy. It feels weird to say Wizzy because most of you guys know him as a Falcon player who was a really good dash dance, who was really good tech chasing. I would say Wizzy's probably one of the most fundamentally sound players in the game. Right? Like today, like, you know, Wizzy, if there's a fundamental Melee technique, Wizzy can probably do it. He's got like some of the best DI. He's got some of the best dash dancing, best tech chasing. But when he started getting prominent in the Smash Bros. Community, it was actually in PM, and he was a Sonic main. If you guys have never seen how Sonic operated in that game, it was kind of fucking gross. Let me see if I can find a really, really good example. This might be the famous one.
Melee, greatest skipper in the game. Yep, and that's exactly why he's dead, sir. All it takes is one side to get...
What the fuck is this?
Even though Sonic
Dude!
is the greatest skipper in the game. Yep, and that's exactly why...
And he just homing attack. I mean, it's called a homing attack because it's an attack and it homes it on you. So you go on stage and you do homing attack and it just... You just launch at the opponent and they die. And that's it.
And that's exactly why he's dead, sir. You're a thick. Sonic
Whoa.
has a clear advantage on space animals.
Nice. Nice combo. Oh, look at the frame rate on this shit. Oh, I'm landing like an idiot. Oh, I'm a W. I'm just falling at you. Oh, springboard. And then he's on the ground for like 4 frames, 5 frames, 6 frames. You're already in a spot dodge. That had like no landing lag. Did that auto? I guess it auto canceled. Dude. Yoink. Oh, you're dead. Truly emergent gameplay. Oh my god.
How to get out of these.
Oh, you're dead.
And I don't think Melee is the way.
So anyway, well, this was my first exposure to Wizard, and Callball, you know, had been known in the Melee community for years at this point. He's a very old school player. He's super duper good. And so I saw this and I was like, I've never heard of this Wizard guy, but this guy is not going to make it. This guy is not going to make it. This guy only knows how to press the B button in Sonic. Like, he's not doing anything. You know, he did the upbeat thing and like it has no lag and he got like a cheesy punish off of the whiff punish attempt. This guy's not going to make it. This guy's got no fundamentals. This guy cannot get the job. He's just relying on his special moves. Like he literally just side B's at him into the corner and kills him at 0. Like what, you know, how is this guy ever going to get good at Melee? There's just no way. This guy is, I'm never going to hear about this guy again. Once Sonic gets nerfed, he's done for. This Wizard guy is done for. Which sounds ridiculous because he turned into obviously one of the most fundamentally sound, if not the most fundamentally sound, in his own way, you know, Falcon players, right? Yeah, it's an insane narrative. And I remember thinking, like, because I saw him entering Melee brackets. I saw his name in the brackets and I was like, that guy's playing Falcon? I was like, man, that Wizzy guy has to realize, like, dude, Melee's not that easy, and especially Falcon. Like, Falcon's not that easy. Like, Falcon's a hard character. And so this is kind of the thing that I wanted to impart to people is like, there's this whole notion of like how to play these cheesy characters in a way, cheesy, right, quote unquote, in a way that will let you succeed with other characters down the road as you keep progressing or try to keep progressing. And the thing about it is I've kind of realized over the years that like and this is in the context of, I think a lot of people ask questions like, which characters, is this a good character to start with? You know, you got to realize, like, you know, Armada, one of the best Fox players, you know, played only Peach for a long time. And I think that like the more people I see who get really good at Melee and you know, and other Smash games, other fighting games, I kind of realize that the whole concept of like starting with a character that'll teach you fundamentals is somewhat, or I wouldn't even say somewhat, I think it's quite overblown. I think people worry about it way too much because you see this kind of thing a lot. You do see like a lot of people ragging on people for picking up a certain character or playing a certain character a certain way and basically insinuating like you're never going to get good, or you're never going to get well-rounded because you're playing in this weird style. And you see this all the time in amongst a variety of different games. And yeah, I mean, time and time again, I just the more I see, the more I think it doesn't matter. I don't know. I guess the one thing that I might go so far as to point out is that, like, you know how Daigo talked about like okay, well with Honda, you know, if you use your normals, right, you're actually like playing footsies, you're actually like playing neutral. You're not just relying on your essentially what are, I mean, obviously they're not B moves because it's Street Fighter, but they're basically B moves, right? It's like special moves. You're like special moves with really ridiculous frame data. Like, as long as you're not relying on those, you'll be fine. You'll get better. But at the same time, you know, I hear that, and then I see this, and I see Wizzy, who's basically just, you know, I didn't see much fundamental, good old footsies based Super Smash Brothers gameplay in there at all. I think that the important thing, like at the end of the day, I think the really important thing is mindset. And I think that like if you get really, really good with whatever character at really whatever game, I usually think the mentality of how to get good is usually what will let you get good with other characters or other play styles or what have you. I think that it's pretty easy to patch your weaknesses, especially because, I mean, unless you're not very observant, ultimately you still, no matter what character you're playing with, you still have to interact with other players who are playing at a high level. Take the Ices, right? Like, yeah, they play in a really weird sort of offbeat style that you can't really like in other Smash characters. But at the same time, if you get really good with the Ices, you're going to be fighting people who are really good with Fox and with Captain Falcon and with Marth and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of feel like the way it ends up working most of the time anyway is you see and you experience high level play with other characters. And I think that that experience usually is good enough to get you there even when you aren't necessarily practicing in a style that is reminiscent of what other characters have to do or what people would consider to be fundamental. And this is all to say that, like, when people complain about cheese, when people complain about, like, oh, your character's so cheesy, so gimmicky, whatever, I think most of the time that shit is cap. Let's just say cap. I think that you can usually circumvent those worries, those fears. And so, you know, if you're a Luigi player and people are telling you you play in a disgusting, degenerate way and you'll never be able to pick up another character because your character's so bizarre and different from how other people play, I would usually just not worry. I would not worry that much about that. In fact, I worry more, and this ties into the mindset thing, I worry the most for low tier players. Not because low tiers don't teach you fundamentals. In theory, they should. In theory, it's so much harder to win with the low tier. And this is what you always see getting, this is like a common thing that gets tossed around. You'll see this on Reddit, YouTube. It's like, oh, this guy's so good. Imagine how good he would be if he played a top tier. This low tier main is so good. Imagine how good they'd be if they played a top tier, because they have to work so hard for their wins that they're getting better in all these aspects of the game that top tier players don't have to worry about, right? They're of course, they're actually fundamentally better players. It's just they're held back by their character. And I actually think the reason I feel like you usually don't see low tier mains end up getting that good with other characters when they make the switch, you just don't see that kind of thing that often. In fact, usually you see the don't test me cases where someone who mains a really good character picks up a low tier for fun and they're really good with the low tier. And I think it ties into the mindset thing. I think when you're a low tier main, I think you're not that used to winning. And I think when you're not that used to winning, when victory isn't a habit, it becomes really hard to win and really hard to push yourself to get better in such a way that you will win even when you switch characters. And I think that works in the opposite when you're somebody like Zane. Low tier mains don't have the grind set. I kind of agree. I hate to say it, but I kind of agree. And so I actually think if you're picking up ices, but you're getting the wins, you know what that feels like. You know how to perform in tournament against other good players. You actually end up, even though it sounds kind of antithetical, I actually think, even though it looks like you're not developing the same fundamentals, I actually think it ends up being a lot better for your just winning is important. I think just winning is what will get you there, no matter what it takes, because you're going to be able to figure out what it takes to win when you make the switch. But if you never, ever, ever get used to the taste of victory and how to get there, I think that does way more damage to your long-term Smash skill, melee skill, fighting game skill than playing a character that doesn't have fundamentals or is all gimmicks or all cheese or whatever. That's how I feel like I've experienced the world, at least the world of Melee. Hey, leave a comment in the YouTube section below. I'm especially interested to hear from people who play like other fighting games, people who play ult, if I have any ult viewers out there. If you have any thoughts about this, I want to do a follow-up video where I address, because I do think there's some subtlety here when it comes to other fighting games. I do think that there's a Melee specific sense to this, and I think there's some reasons. One of those reasons being that Melee doesn't have patches. I actually am interested to hear what gamers from other scenes or other games or other communities think about what I said. So let me know, and I'll probably react. I'm probably going to do a follow-up video where I respond to some of your comments, because I'm kind of curious what people think by this whole concept. All right, well, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's check out East Coast Fridays.